Crestron Masters 2024 recently happened, and we have two Diamond programmers on this show to talk about the highlights from the event, some of the conversations that were had, and how this impacts programmers of all types. All that and more on A State of Control. A State of Control, episode 116, Our People. Welcome to A State of Control, an AVNation podcast that highlights the control programming and automation aspects of the audiovisual industry. My name is Steve Greenblatt. I'm your host. Thanks for joining us today. So if you're a frequent listener of this show, you know that we like to cover very evergreen topics, but we also try to touch on some of the happenings and the goings on in the industry that we feel are important to this audience. And this is one of those episodes. And if you've heard in the past, we've covered some of the annual events that pertain to programmers. This one in particular is Crestron Masters. And we've, for many years, we've covered Crestron Masters. The last couple are episodes 99 and 82. And there's several more if you want to catch up on some of those back shows. So with me today to discuss this event are two of the participants and attendees. But before I get to welcome them, I want to say hello to my partner here at A State of Control, Rich Fragoza. How are you, Rich?
I'm doing good. I said we were talking a little before. I almost had a weird little mishap in my lab, but glad to see that I am still technologically connected. So it's a beautiful day, and it is actually some time for some spring West Coast mellow greetings. So it's a good time.
Nice. And we get to welcome back two returning guests, one that's been with us for quite a number of episodes. The last episode was number 107, and we get to say hello and also share some news that he's with a new company. He is now with CTI as the VP of Machine Intelligence. Dave Hatz, welcome back, Dave.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Excited to be here.
Glad to have you. And last but not least, we just had him on episode 114, and he's already back for a second time. So we must like each other. He is Russ Noble from ClearAlan. He's the principal there. Welcome back, Russ.
Thanks so much for having me. We're like Rich, we're getting some spring finally up here in Canada as well.
Nice. Crestron Masters is an event that's been going on for quite some time. It's 20 plus years easily. And the last one was in 2022. That was in the US. They're now alternating between the US and Europe. So it was a pretty exciting time for programmers and others to get together and talk Crestron and get to hear what's new and learn together and just see what's going to be happening moving forward. Some of the classes were a little bit more hands-on. There were some changes. There was also some just talk about business and AI, and also some time to network with some of the leaders there at Crestron. So, Rich, an event like this is pretty significant. It costs a lot to put on, and also is an investment on the people going there. What really about these types of events keep them so strong year after year?
First off, I'll say I was unable to attend Masters this year, and so I, one of the things about Masters is that, it is a time for I can't even call it fraternity, but really the community of programmers to get together and exchange information in a way that is really enriching. I've said it so many times is that, the programming community itself tends to be a solitary endeavor. And programmers in general tend to be a little bit more introspective than others. And I think that by being in a space together, by being in a classroom situation, by just the vibe of being able to sit next to somebody and talk about something and that aha moment that they have, or they go, oh man, I remember this. And it spurs conversation, and the organic nature of honing your craft is a lot different when you are among your peers who all share a common language than, potentially just picking up a webinar. I mean, again, information, no matter what, is going to be great because you're going to wind up picking up something as you are pursuing your trade. However, the ability to be among people who have been through the same issues that you have, it lends a lot to just sometimes reminding yourself that, you know what, I don't suck. I'm kind of good at what I do, and we all have these problems, and I'm not the only one sitting there when, I talk to the manufacturer and they say, oh, we've never had this problem before. You're the first one. And you want to start believing it in that moment. You're like, no, wait, there's 50 other guys that just said, no, they did this too. But, it's, and again, here's the West Coast vibe thing, right? But there's a lot about nourishing your soul, right? Nourishing your spirit. And I think that the longer you're at this, it is easy to get apathetic, just from your energy level and your enthusiasm and just the picking yourself up and wanting to learn, right? Because again, it's I've got a lot more salt and pepper in my hair these days, and I'm amazed at what some of these young programmers are doing and what they're capable of. I'm watching my son who's in 8th grade, and just even the math that he's doing in 8th grade. It's amazing to see what the speed of technology and what it's doing for the generations of programmers coming up, the generations behind them. But at the same time, looking and going, okay, I know what I know. There's experience there. How much of the technology do I want to know, right? What's the line of the plumber? It's like, it's the $500 isn't for when I hit it with the wrench. The $500 is to know where to hit. That's what Masters is about, right? Knowing where to hit, and gaining that knowledge. And so, a big part of it is, again, like I said, is that it's not just the technical. The technical is easy. You can pick that up anywhere. You can pull up a help file. You can pull up, put it up in a community chat. But the actual ability to interact with people who are facing the same challenges as you does a lot. That, but all the time when I talk to people and they come back, they're like, I feel recharged. Why? Because I was among my people. And there's a lot to be said about that. So, that's why I think it lingers, and again, why I see like CEDIA and Infocom, even though on a larger scale, community is important. And I think we had that during the pandemic. We learned how much we miss community, when you don't have it for that moment, and then you get back to it and you kind of go, oh, I do feel better, right? I feel recharged. I've got, the same problem that was facing me when I left on Monday doesn't feel as bad now that I'm back on Friday. And what happened in between is, again, that perspective gets realigned.
Dave, I'll jump over to you. I too didn't make it to this year's event, but what were some of the highlights that were intriguing? What were some of the things that made people realize that this was that signified that value, that it means that I walked away with something that I can use or can say that this was a worthwhile trip?
So I think from my perspective, the first thing is Masters has really evolved to become 3 different events in many ways. They've introduced over the last couple of years the Modern Work Summit, which is a 1-day piece of Masters, but it's really focused to end users, to technology executives, to business leaders at our end users, and help them understand the work trends, the technology trends that parallel what we all are thinking about at Masters. The second track is the architect, the system designer track, the MTA track. That's focused on the design of the systems and making sure that what's planned, we all as developers can actually execute and are set up for success. And then there's the programming track, which is sort of what most of us probably think about when we talk about Masters. I'm going to focus mostly on that programming track because, A, it's state of control, and B, that's just where our passions are. I think the first thing for me was there was a really heavy focus on labs this year. This was my 19th Masters. And so I've seen a lot of change. I've seen the ebb and flow of how the event shifts from year to year. And one of the biggest pieces of feedback from the last Masters was, we all get, for the most part, the basics. There's very few people who haven't touched C#. And if they haven't, there's classes for that now. So, the attendees coming to Masters aren't necessarily looking for, those vanilla topics that they were 3 or 4 years ago. What they're looking for is really hands-on. And so the format this year was fewer programming classes, fewer programming slots, if you will, but more focus on a deep dive within a topic, whether it was C#, HTML5, Construct, the Automate VX platform, and so on. The other thing with that was there was a real intent to make sure that everyone comes away from sessions with actionable content, if you will, with code snippets, with a complete program, with guides that tell me how to do this. Because one of the things for myself, when I'm sitting in the class, I'm following along, I'm doing the exercises, it all makes sense. I can follow the logic of step A to B to C. And then we go back to our day job. And often I won't touch that for 3 months, 6 months. But I'll tell you what, sometime next fall, I'm going to come across an instance where I remember that, oh man, I know exactly what I need to do. I learned it at Masters. And I'll go back, and heaven help me if I can't figure out what's going on in my notes. What was I thinking? Well, I didn't take as many notes, or I skipped steps because in the moment it all made sense. And so the Masters team, or the instructor team, really put emphasis on making sure that the complete package of documentation, if you will, to go with the class is available, so that when someone comes back to it 6 months later, they've got all the keys to be successful and they can reteach themselves. I think that was a real good recognition on the part of Crestron to bring that into the fold this year and put emphasis on it. Because I think, it's understanding the audience better. And the more Crestron understands the audience, the more they can tailor the experience and really deliver excellence there. Two other things that come to mind for the event. It was the first time we've had the opportunity to talk about AI in the context of, it sort of being part of everyone's day-to-day. So I thought that was really exciting. And then, last, I think there was a little different tone set by Crestron this year at the event from the beginning. And it was really around making sure that, Crestron acknowledges that they stubbed their toes, they burned bridges over the last few years, and that they're really open to hearing about opportunities and ways they can begin to re-earn that trust. And I think that was, both recognized and very much appreciated from many people I talked to, just as the event unfolded.
That's a great comprehensive view of it, and I think we're going to examine each of those pieces, because thank you for that. Because for somebody who didn't attend, I think that really puts a good wrapper on it. And I want to shift over to Russ for you. Although you've been to Masters before, we've seen each other there. This was a little bit of a different experience for you because you've now attained the level of a diamond programmer. Now you're part of not only the learning, but the instruction. How did this event stand out to you versus others in the past?
It was obviously very different having to teach, but I'd echo what Dave said about the focus on actionable learning, that you can walk away with something that you can reflect upon later and continue to learn with it. So, in our class, we made sure that the code progression's built, and at the end there's a solution. Everything's documented in the solution. In other classes, you were using what you would use in one class into the second class. So you might be using the user interface that you worked on in this lab inside of this lab. So at the end of it, there was a continuity that was provided that I hadn't seen in Masters in any year previous, from the time that you started learning, everything down to the very first session of getting everyone connected to their VC4. And so the beginning part of every single class wasn't making sure that everyone could just load program. Everyone did that together. And so there was a lot more focus on the education and actually acting on the learning material in the classes, which was great. Attendance was fantastic this year too. I did have the pleasure of attending last year in Spain as well. So I was able to see the difference between the North American and the European Masters. And the content is the same. Slightly smaller group over there. So feeling the dynamic of the smaller group and the learning in the smaller group and the learning in the larger group. I was quite pleased actually this year at Masters where it's a much larger group. Like there were 900 plus attendees this year, but it still had that smaller learning group feel that I had in Madrid last year, which was quite pleasant. And there was a lot less focus on products this year. Obviously, as Dave had mentioned, the stumbles in the past few years, there was a lot more discussion about the problems themselves that we help solve, which was nice. Having attended Masters as a programmer for many years, the new products being announced, the new products that are released don't mean much to us until somebody puts them into a job. And what the technical specs are, we can find later on. So it was great to not have to deal with that content. It's nice to know what's coming, but it's nice to know the roadmap and not necessarily the details of the inputs and outputs on a box. The other thing that was prominent everywhere was HTML5. So obviously CH5, HTML5 is in everything. We're seeing it in other products in the industry as well. And the courses that were taught this year at Masters on that topic were great. Again, actionable items. And a lot of the courses weren't typing with the instructor. They were discussing what the concept and the concepts were. So really focusing on the why instead of the how, which was wonderful.
That's fantastic. That makes a big difference. And that's, I think, very valuable to people who have to be able to show something for the time that they put in. I thank you for sharing that. Rich, I'm going to kind of shift it back to you. Dave talked a little bit about Crestron being in a position to bring people back and knowing that they stubbed their toe, and we don't have to get into the specifics of that, but from programmers' perspective, how would manufacturer get either the confidence or get that loyalty back?
Well, let's see. Diplomatically speaking, I think that manufacturers who have been successful in maintaining loyalty were the ones who, from the outset, were willing to be transparent. I think that manufacturers in the industry, some of them who haven't had the same loyalty, or they've seen people go to other manufacturers during the supply chain issues, everything else, you can't blame your customers. And I think that companies moving forward who do want to see a return to loyalty, and not it being one way, because there was a certain period of time, and I mean, let's go back 20 years ago, 30 years ago with other manufacturers who aren't even around really anymore in this capacity, who wanted some blindsided loyalty and just expected loyalty. And, if you didn't follow which way they were going, well, oh well, right? And the current business conditions don't allow for that anymore. There are too many choices now. There are too many other routes in our industry, and just in the AV industry, in terms of the offerings, that the idea of where you were as a manufacturer 10, 20 years ago and the clout that you've established and that everybody wants to work with you is not the same. We see it in the workforce. It's the same viewpoint in the workforce, right? Which is people understand their value now when they're in the workforce. They're not just going to necessarily take what they're told. Dealers and programmers are finally, we've always had an identity crisis, right? No, nobody's going to want us again we just got to put our head down and just kind of accept what they've told us how it's going to be. And then, when they don't admit their mistakes, they'll come back and, with open arms, right? I've said, if you kick the puppy enough times, sooner or later, it's not going to come back. The pandemic and supply chain issues and the lack of transparency from some manufacturers was a little telling. And because, again, organizations are run by people. And when a kind of the direction of a company, the culture of a company is to, again, kind of blame who you're trying to sell to and say, oh no, it'll be fine. Just, everybody will understand because we're X. It doesn't work that way anymore. I think moving forward that you have to address it. And if you haven't addressed it, and if you soft pedaled around it and said, well, we know we had some issues, but those issues are gone now. And hey, look, come on back, all is well. Yeah, people got memories. And again, the manufacturers who we've dealt with are the ones who were like, yeah, we messed up. There's no other way around it. We messed up, but we are going to make it right. There's a couple of manufacturers in the industry that those words have never come out. They've never said to their people, we're going to make it right. We're going to do right by you. right? You stuck with us. We're going to go ahead and show why you should have stuck with us. And instead of getting calls and saying, oh, by the way, I know that you had no customers for a year and a half. We're going to go ahead and suspend your dealership because you didn't sell enough during that period of time. I've talked to several people who got those calls. That's rough. I mean, talk about tone deaf. So, in the control space industry, I like it because as more players are coming in, it is kind of like where we were 25 years ago. Iron's going to sharpen iron, right? More people coming in with good solutions are going to force the other companies to innovate instead of just expect like it's always been. Well, we've had this and we've sold 1 million of these. Well, that's great. It's no guarantee you're going to sell 1 million more if somebody can do something far better and appreciates, who's doing it for them.
Russ, I'll bounce back to you from a programmer's perspective, and not to beat this drum too much, but it's important to know that the technology and the livelihood that you're investing in is going to be sustainable for some time. Do you feel from walking away from this event that confidence has been reinstilled?
That's actually a great question. So I would, although there was a lot less chest thumping at this year's event, I would say that something that was missing was inspiration. So in the keynote sessions, there was a lot of transparency, as Rich pointed out, which is valuable, especially when you're looking to rebuild relationships. But there wasn't enough of the marketing inspiration. There has to be not a hurrah, but there has to be a we got it, we got you. And I don't think that was communicated well enough as far as the vision of where what we're doing is going to be going. So I think that the event could have used a little bit more inspiration, certainly out of those keynote sessions.
Dave, I know that you were actually on a panel, and I've heard that you had some very transparent remarks that you shared with the audience in terms of your experience. What can programmers do to get to express themselves in a constructive way, and how can we help to ensure that the skill set that we have is going to live on for some time?
That's a great question, and you're right. I was in a really unique position this year, and that I was invited to participate in the opening keynote. And I was asked up on stage and had a fireside chat, if you will, with Brad Hensey, the head of marketing for Crestron. And I was, contrary to some people asking me this, I was actually asked by Crestron to answer the exact question, that we're sort of talking around here, and that what was the impact on, my relationship with Crestron over the last 3 or 4 years. And, obviously when you're asked to answer a question like that, in a forum where, it's Crestron's event, of course, the first question to them I asked was, is there anything you don't want me to say? And the only guidance I was given was no, be open and honest and transparent. That's what everyone comes here to hear. That I was given no other guidance than that. And so, I had talked ahead of time with a few of my peers to make sure that I'm not just, out of bounds with my thoughts. But, sort of similar, Rich, to some of the things you said, I tried to lay it out in, of course, a diplomatic way, but a very honest way that we were burned. We had missed deadlines. We were told one thing and it didn't come through. And the analogy I gave was that it's a lot like dating. And we hit a really rough patch. I mean, it was bad for a while. And I said that. At the same time, over the last year and a half, we have product coming in our warehouse. And that's sort of step number one. Right now, Crestron at this event is, in my opinion, is starting to try to listen, try to ask some of the right questions, maybe not all of them, but some of them. And so, when you're dating, you can hit a rough spot and decide that, okay, let's give this a second whirl. And, I gave this analogy on stage, and what I said was, there's nothing guaranteed. Right now, it seems like things are going better. But the long-termness of this relationship still is not guaranteed. I'm not ready to make the decision that we are going back to Crestron on every product. I'm also not ready to throw Crestron out and say I'm not going to come back at all. It's going to take some time. And, when I brought that up, Brad's answer to that was, we welcome the opportunity to earn your trust back. And to me, that was the telling statement of it all. The first bit of it was really, I got the opportunity to vent on behalf of the audience. And Russ, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there was an applause in the middle of some of the things I was saying there.
Absolutely, Dave. The transparency and the truth that you brought was welcomed. You're right. It was like watching a relationship mending at a dining room table.
And I did, even after the event, I checked with a bunch of people who would come up to me and we were talking. And, the two questions I'd ask is, did I overemphasize anything? And did I miss anything? And, to everyone I talked to, they were like, no, you hit the nail on the head. And, so to me, the fact that Crestron asked me to come into that forum and wanted to hear the feedback is encouraging. But again, it's the whole actions speak louder than words. And I have yet to see all of the actions come through. We're starting to see some actions, but I do agree with you, Russ, that I think that moment, overshadowed the message of the keynote a little. It's because following that was Dan Feldstein coming and doing sort of fireside chat, and it sort of took that same tenor. And the part that I'm with you that for me, and the part that Rich or Steve, to your original question, where can the programmer come in? I think continuing to share open and honest feedback with Crestron, they've indicated they want to hear it. They've indicated they're open to listening in a different way than they have in the past. And so making sure that you are providing constructive ideas, not just what's wrong, but what would you do to fix it? What would be something that they could implement that would alleviate the pain, would alleviate the issue that your customers see, that you see? Often I think we get, bent up of, okay, I've been given a forum, I'm going to just tell them how bad it is. Come with solutions. Mm-hmm. It might not be the right solution. It might not be the one that they want to implement, but by bringing that forward, it gives them the ability to share that feedback. Because the one thing that, we and Russ, I think you were in the room on Sunday afternoon. So the Masters starts on Tuesday. We were setting up a couple days before. On Sunday afternoon, we were all told that every bit of feedback that the Crestron team is given is important. Take note of it. Take note of who shared it so that Crestron can get back to them with what they're going to do with that. Again, that's a signal to me that something has changed. Let's see what the actions that come from that feedback now are.
And I think that's what the inspiration that I'm talking about, Dave, in those keynotes, that transparency was wonderful. But I would had looked for, I guess, at the end of those discussions, what's the action, what can be done about this, and for Crestron to provide some of those. Obviously, they can't commit to things on the spot like that, but something that just lets us know that, especially as programmers, I mean, this is our business. The longevity of them as a participant, that is very important to us. And through the pandemic, so many of our contracting partners have moved to other products. We've already supported those products, so we're supporting the breadth of all of the control solutions that we've been talking about. But knowing where Crestron will go with that and understanding that there's a vision there is important.
100%.
You bring up a good point that you just spoke about, Russ, and is that programmers themselves, it's got to be the acknowledgement that if we had stuck with the story that was originally told, a lot of us would have been out of business. Many of us were forced to ramp up our other software support languages in order to survive. And that doesn't get spoken about a lot. And that's a real important part of, like what you were saying, Dave, was the mending. And again, let's face it, we've all had different experiences over the past decades. It's hard to sometimes pipe up because there was a very real potential for retribution when you spoke up. I mean, it wasn't even veiled, you know. But this is a big part, and this is the hard conversation, right, to have, which is, it's not that I, you know, like let's go to the data analogy. I didn't want to leave you, you know, you made me leave you, and now saying that you want me to come back, yeah, you know, I'm a little twice bitten, you know, once shy on this one, and it is important that the understanding that it's no longer a silo. It is a programming community, and the programming community happened to come together for this product environment ecosystem but there has to be the tacit acknowledgement that, hey, there are others out there, and we are trying to build all of this together. And not to say that they're going to play nice with other manufacturers, but it has to be an acknowledgement moving forward of if you really say what you mean, first, you appreciate what I had to go through. Second, you acknowledge that I'm still going through it and I've had to expand my resources. And that, yeah, like you said, you know, there were real consequences for a lot of companies. You know, I know we picked up software we hadn't touched in a decade plus. And now when I look at our mix of who we're working with, you know, what was a one-off, you know, we're seeing it come through. And again, the choice is there. It's like, oh wow, you know, again, it's what is it? You know, you were dating the bad boy, and now you got, you know, now you've grown up and you've seen the, you know, it's like the rom-com movie, right? The one that was always there, you know, was right, was looking me in the face. You know, it's a very difficult conversation to have at the manufacturer level, and it's a very difficult conversation for this community to bring up. But enough time has passed where it's, I think it, and like you were saying, Russ, is that it was, you know, the marketing side and where we're going, because for 2 years, the can was getting kicked down the road. It was just getting kicked down. It was like, well, this and that, and this and that, and this and that. And it is now the time, and I'm not even going to call it a reckoning, but you got to have those hard conversations other than an open forum theoretically. Now it's like, okay, you've said this. You've said you want this. You know, it's like I do with my kids, right? Okay, well, an apology means I won't do it again. So how are you now reaching out to say we're earning it back doesn't mean just taking an order like you used to. Earning it back means, how are you reaching out? What are you doing different? What are you doing to covet the people that stood by you? And the manufacturers that don't, they're going to find manufacturers who do, you know, and that's fine. And it's, you know, I mean, this goes in, and we knew that the show was going to maybe go into someplace different than just, you know, the event itself, because the programming community has a lot to look at in terms of the crossroads that they're at, right? Because of the classes with HTML5, machine language learning, AI, other manufacturers are bringing in other tools that have never been used in our industry before. You know, you've got Node-RED, you've got
The great part, though, is a lot of those tools are overlapping each other now, which is wonderful, right? So you're not dealing with these proprietary things. We can actually start to leverage even outside of our community. That's one of the best things that I see. One of the biggest opportunities for us is, you know, we talk about the size of our community, and it's wonderful. And if I can just come back 1 second to what you brought up in the beginning, Rich, about being in a large group of people that do what you do and having the same frustrations and the same challenges. But I'd also flip it on the other side of the coin to say that we all celebrate similar victories. So when we're in that group, we can celebrate each other, which is not necessarily something that, if you're working individually in a dealer or individually in an end user, what's a great win for you, what you may walk out the door very proud of, nobody may know what you did. So it's great to be able to share that and have someone go, "Oh, that was really cool. How did you do that?" and start to banter on it. And so, it's our people, right? To be in the environment with just our people is wonderful. We're painting with the same brushes, we're using the same palettes, and those palettes outside of just the AV world are now available to us. So, we've always developed in these proprietary environments using call it a beta test pool of 1,000 certified programmers worldwide. And now you can leverage libraries that are field tested by millions of developers.
As programmers, take note of the fact that all of the Crestron products now, from sort of, a year ago, we'll say forward, all have open APIs. And I don't think that's an accident by Crestron, Spot, but I also take that as an advantage. And in my previous role, we were starting to have discussions with a lot of our key customers where over the pandemic, we had shifted their standards from Crestron to something else. And we were sort of at the point where let's generate the next generation of standards. And it's sort of the debate of, do we go back to what we had, to the old, do we just go to Crestron as our standard? Do we stick with where we had adopted to? Do we find something in the middle? And one of the things that I actually found really helpful was Crestron has some products that are still top of class. There's in my opinion, no great alternative to. But because of the open APIs, now I have the opportunity to take that really good product and go find what are other best of breed products that work well and can integrate together back to where we have been focusing for decades now, of taking the best of breed and interconnecting them. Steve, your world of making things work together from, vendor X to vendor Y, with ease. And I think there's a lot of new opportunity so that we don't have to, so we can change that relationship and accept that relationship, Rich, as we see fit. We keep some control in it. We're not just, oh yeah, all water under the bridge, I'm okay with it. Yeah, maybe we get to that point. I'm not going to try to read the future. I'm horrible at it. But let's take this one step at a time. I know something that really works well. I know something else that really works well. Well, let's try those two together. And then we grow from there.
So I'm going to use that as the teaser for the continuation of this conversation, because we're lucky enough to have our guests back for a second part of this. And this is probably a first out of State of Control, where we're going to do a two-part session. So stay tuned for next month and you get to continue this conversation. Rich gave us some good teasers too that we'll be following up on. Until then, though, I'd like to thank our guests and let them tell you a little bit about where you can find them and continue the conversation. First off, Dave Hatz and his new role at CTI. Dave, how could people get in touch with you and learn more about CTI?
Yeah, so first, find me on LinkedIn. That's where I do most of my writing and most of my content share. Certainly, CTI.com. You can find CTI. CTI is also the parent company of AVNation. So just get that one in for you, Steve. But definitely, always feel free to reach out. I've had a few people reach out after Masters, with either questions or, hey, it was just great catching up. Appreciate our time together. And so I'm always willing to look forward to hearing from the community here.
Excellent. And Russ, thanks for being back with us. How could people get in touch with you, continue the conversation, ask you questions, and learn more about your company, ClearAlan?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, the company as well. So at ClearAlan, ClearAlan, and our website is clearalan.ca.
Thanks. And last but not least, Rich, how could people get in touch with you and continue this conversation and give them something to look forward to in the next episode?
You can find me on the interwebs. Let's see, Fregosa Designs the company, at our Fregosa on X. I keep wanting to say Twitter, but X. But all of the other ones, you can also see me. You can find me a lot of times on a lot of the community programming groups. We've been trying to focus on, the reach one, teach one side of things, and ramping up our efforts on kind of sharing some of that knowledge. But first and foremost, I hope you find me here on AVNation.tv or with my good friend and partner here, Steve, or Resi Week, or any of the shows that we're on. And always, please just support our sponsors.
Excellent. Yeah, AVNation.tv is a place to go and check out. There's so many great shows and also a lot of new things that are being done there. So please be sure to check that out and make sure you leave a comment or review. Let us know what you think. Give us a shout if you want to be on a future show. And also if you have something that you think we should be covering. For me personally, you can reach me at Steve Greenblatt on social media, my company Control Concepts at controlconcepts.net. And look forward to speaking to you more about Crestron Masters on the next episode. So stay tuned to next month. Make sure to like and subscribe and stay with us. We want to grow our audience. So until next time, this has been A State of Control,
the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.